Welcome back to Between the Lines here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We are going to talk with the RacinBoys now, and after a weekend of something besides A.J. Allmendinger winning a race, I would say the poor guy, except there was a tremendous tragedy in racing. He won his first race, and nobody is going to notice, and we're not going to talk about that. Maybe we will on Friday in the regular racing segment with our boys Scott and Kirk. How you guys doing?
Doing as well as we can expect here, Danny.
All right. I think it's great to go to you guys because you're obviously immersed in this type of thing. I guess the thing that I'll start off with, the way I will phrase this, and I don't know if you heard our comments about it earlier, but is I think maybe in my mind, the last thing we can do here is just say that this was a tragic accident. Would you agree or disagree?
I would disagree. I think it's a tragic accident. Unfortunately, it happened. We don't have the details. We don't know exactly what happened out on the racetrack, and until we do, we can't cast judgment on what happened.
Well, the only way to do that is to get a lie detector or something that works better than that or whatever and wire it up to Tony Stewart, because that's really the only way we know for sure. So we are left to speculate. It's all we can do, but we do have visual evidence and audio evidence. Mm-hmm. How would you describe what went down, Scott?
Well, I mean, Danny, here again, going back to the only person that knows is Tony. Let me start by saying that, I like to think that I know Tony pretty well. In fact, I hung out with him for a couple hours last Wednesday. Tony cares about the race fans, the drivers. Tony's not married. He doesn't have a family. This is his family, the motorsports community. So I know deep down in my heart, I feel like that there's no way that Tony would do anything that would jeopardize the life of another driver, fan, or somebody that's a part of the motorsports community. What I see in the video, I'm not sure it even matters what I saw in the video, but I will tell you it's a dark track, driver wearing a black fire suit. The sprint cars are the sight lines are very restricted. You can't see very well when you're inside of one of these cars. The young driver was on the right side of Tony Stewart's car. If you know anything about wing sprint cars, the right side wing board goes down, restricting your view on the right side of your car. Unbelievable. You just can't imagine how restricted it is, the sight lines in these race cars. And if you watch the video, and again, I'm not sure, but it appears that the car just before Tony Stewart narrowly missed the driver, and then Tony unfortunately did hit him. So, I mean, the thoughts and prayers are out to the family. I hate it.
Let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. When you watch and listen to that video, mm-hmm. do you hear Tony Stewart accelerate in any way? And would it be a Tony Stewart move or an old car race guy move on a dirt track if someone's pointing at you to maybe rev the engine a little bit to, fire some dirt up on him or let him know you saw him or, things like that? Would that be something that happens?
Yeah, I guess that could happen. Sure, that could be the case. But I again, the video evidence. How do we really know that that's Tony Stewart's car revving the motor? How do we know that a car closer to that camera wasn't doing the same thing at the very moment that Tony attempted to turn his car to the left?
Well, it sounds to me, when I watch it, and I watched it a bunch, you sound to me like a guy trying to make an excuse for something that happened.
No, I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm trying to make the point that we have not looked at all the evidence. See, I'm not going to be quick to blame somebody for taking somebody's life until I have all the facts and all the evidence.
I'm not doing that. Neither one of us thinks that there was any intent to hit the man. Mm-hmm. But Tony Stewart is somebody who has said before that he would run somebody over the next
Danny,
time.
you don't take that. Danny, let me check you right there on that. You're taking that statement out of content. That statement was about Matt Kenseth a couple years ago, and when a driver says that, he's not talking about running over the individual. He's talking about running over his car, spinning
I
that
got
guy out.
that.
So don't act like Tony said he'd run over somebody.
I agree with you I agree with you
That being said,
right.
If this is just Joe Blow, we don't know who either one of these two guys are, okay? Mm-hmm. Zero. Isn't at least warranting speculation that the person who bumped the driver out of the race and then comes around again and the driver is showing him up and pointing at him, is it that far-fetched for people to think that Tony Stewart would like to do something to him?
Here's my point about the whole incident that happened. First of all, Tony Stewart probably didn't feel that he did anything wrong on the racetrack to cause the accident. Second of all,
well, it looks like a pretty clear intent to.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
It would be different if Tony was in a state of rage at the moment that this happened. And I can promise you, only completing one more lap, coming back around to the driver that's pointing his finger, Tony was in no state of rage. He didn't feel like that. He didn't feel threatened. And I really want to believe the problem is the track was dark. The driver was wearing a black fire. Listen, I've been out on the racetrack. Sprint car drivers have ran into push trucks out on the racetrack because tracks are dark or because the vision is so restricted in these cars. Why is it so hard to believe that could happen, that it's a visual thing instead of somebody having to show somebody up? Why? Why do we have a hard time believing it's not a visual thing?
I believe it could be visual, except that I hear the motor. Kirk, what do you see and hear when you watch that tape?
Well, I agree with Scott. I don't think you can deduce anything conclusively by just watching that video. You cannot do that. And as Scott pointed out, that engine could have been, that revving of the engine could be coming from another car. I don't know.
It seems very unlikely to me that happens the exact same time.
Well, we don't know.
His car moves forward.
My view of the
what would the chances of that be? If I said it's a 50-50 or more, what do you think that?
First of all, understand the dynamics of a sprint car. First of all, these cars don't turn like a pavement car. They're not a car that has a lot of grip, and a lot of times when you try to turn to avoid something, you have to use the gas pedal. And because these cars are direct drive with no transmission, it's the engine basically connected to the rear end. And when you give the car a little gas and you have 12 or 13 inches of stagger, and stagger is the difference between the right side tire, the right rear tire, and the left rear tire, even if you give the gas just a little bit, a lot of the times the car will step out. The car will move to the right because of the rollout or the stagger in the rear of the car. So you have to understand the dynamics of these cars. They don't turn on a dime. They don't stop on a dime.
Don't.
You have to use the gas pedal to make them turn sometimes. There's a lot of things that are going on at that particular moment that this happened.
And there very well could be a circumstance where he did have to hit the throttle in order to get it to turn. He may have saw him at the last. We don't know until we hear from Tony Stewart, and I hope he holds a press conference at some point. Now would be too soon. But at some point over the next several days, I hope he holds a press conference and answers questions. You know what? I think he will do well in that kind of a circumstance because he really is an honest guy. And I think we'll have a whole different view of this whole thing once we hear from him, because really he is the only one that really knows what actually occurred.
We're talking to the RacinBoys about this Tony Stewart, Kevin Ward Jr. tragic accident that happened this Saturday night, late Saturday night up in New York on the eve of the Watkins Glen race in which Kevin Ward tragically lost his life. Scott, you raced on asphalt tracks and dirt tracks. You've done a lot of this over your life. My scenario that I've created for this is, they have this kid gets out of the car and he's pointing at Tony. Mm-hmm. Is it far-fetched to think that Tony may just spin the wheels at all? I mean, just say, hey, nice racing, anything. Because we see these guys after you win a race, they go, they go bump each other. They do those things. That's what I'm talking about.
I understand what you're saying, Todd. Here's the only thing that I could say to that. Yes. Sometimes if you feel somebody is showing you up out on the racetrack, or or if you want to get your message across to another
Or
driver,
even say good job. I mean, anything like that, right? You little.
I've done
something.
it, and I'll give you an example. When you're not, I've been frustrated with another driver. I'll give you one occasion where this happened. Pulled up on the next to the scales. I had a little thing out on the racetrack with a guy. I wasn't too happy about it. He was on the scale. I pulled up next to the scale. He can't hear me. My motor's too loud. I've got my helmet on. I'm strapped into the race car. It doesn't do me any good to yell because he can't hear me. So I stick in the clutch and rev the motor a few times to show my displeasure in that driver. Yes, that happens.
So that's, to me, when I watch this thing, and we're guessing at this point because we haven't heard from Tony, but that's what it seems like to me happened.
See,
I'm pretty confident that when I hear the engine rev and I see his car move at the exact same moment, that's what I think happened in this deal. And I think there's no doubt that kid should have gotten out of his car and moved down. There's no doubt about that. But when I see that happen, I think that's something that a 20-year-old Tony Stewart would have done if he was dirt racing and he'd got run in the wall. He's the kind of guy who would have gotten out of his car and pointed at somebody. Am I crazy for thinking that?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, Todd, and I love you, but that's just an uneducated opinion. Again, not knowing the dynamics of these race cars and how you have to operate one of these race cars comes into the equation. A sprint car is totally different than any other car. There's nothing like a sprint car in dirt track racing or any form of motorsports. It is its own unique beast, and the way that you are strapped in, the way that you can see your sight lines, the power, the way you got to drive them with the gas pedal, all these things come in to play. How do we know that at the last second he didn't see Kevin Ward Jr., tried to turn the car away, gassed the car up to get away from him, and the car just stepped out a little bit?
I believe that. No, what I'm talking about is the actions of Kevin Ward Jr. would have been what possibly a Tony Stewart would have done when he was 20.
Oh, sure.
If he got run in the wall, he'd be the first guy to jump out of his car and point.
We've all done it.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
There's no doubt that Tony Stewart would have
done
the same thing. Yeah, there's no question about it.
Every driver that's had any long period of a career on dirt or asphalt has done exactly what Kevin Ward Jr. did that night. We've all gotten out of the car. We've thrown helmets at people. We've pointed at people. Tony Stewart's thrown his helmet. Every driver has done it. Kirk Busch, remember, at the Brickyard got out one time and give Jimmy Spencer he gave him the gesture out on the racetrack.
Right.
I mean, this happens. And it might be something that needs to be looked at in the future in motorsports. I will give credit to one person here locally. Earl Walls, the promoter of Central Missouri Speedway, only promoter that I've ever known of on the local level to have a rule that states if you get out of your car, you're kicked out for the rest of the year. If you get out of your car on the racetrack, you're kicked out for the rest of the year. Pending only if there's a fire or if there's an emergency and you have to get out of the car. But if you just get out of your car to show your displeasure to another driver or an official or for whatever reason, just get out of the car, you're suspended. And I think that this is something that maybe we need to look at. Maybe our industry needs to get a hold of and make that kind of a rule that goes across the board at all grassroots tracks.
Why is it within, I think, the racing community that the scenario, I think a scenario where Tony Stewart does something, okay, is every bit as plausible as the opposite? Would you disagree with that?
Because of past history and just some of the instances that Tony Stewart has been involved in?
No, just general, two guys tangle, guy's coming out, he's pointing at you. I'm not even talking necessarily about Tony Stewart, but yes, he's shown a temper at the track, and as you say, Scott, most racers have done that, but I would say that you would consider Tony a little more firebrand-ish as far as a driver is concerned. So don't you, to me, that seems every bit as plausible as the more innocent explanation. That's all. I guess that's my whole point.
Well, right now, we just don't know what happened.
Well, of course we don't know, and that's probably good for Tony because we're never going to know because he's not going to say.
Well,
if he does say, he's going to say, what's he going to say? Oh, I wanted to take. What if he did want to take him out? You think he's going to tell us?
No, but I think you're going to know if he presents himself in a press conference and answers questions to the media, which I think he will do at some point.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to draw some different conclusions than what we do right now. I want to see what he says and how he says it.
Let me just follow up with that statement that you made there. Yes, we know about Tony, his
Right.
antics out on the racetrack. We've seen it. We know what he's all about, right? We know that. But the thing is, what people don't know about Tony Stewart, he's one of the most caring people that I've ever met in motorsports. He does so much for so many people behind the scenes.
Totally agree.
Unmeasurable, the amount of things that he does. Just like going to that go-kart track last week with us out there. Helped raise $50,000. He countless.
Hell, hold on, Scott.
Like
Hold on, Scott.
Yeah.
Because somebody does a bunch of nice things doesn't mean that they're not capable.
I agree with that.
Of wanting to,
agree with that. But
send a message. Send a message.
No,
I'm just saying, send a message. Neither one of us, nobody here believes that Tony Stewart wanted to strike that driver, or probably even get close to striking the driver.
Right,
but what do you want to maybe throw a little scare into him? Hey, young pup, I'm up here. It was clean racing, although it looks like he really. I guess that's clean racing.
That was
if you wanted
clean
to wipe him out.
He didn't touch him. He didn't even touch him. He moved. He slid up to him. Kevin Ward Jr. got up.
I just watched this thing 12 times. You're telling me that those two cars didn't make contact?
I didn't see any contact in the video. What I did see is Tony roll up to him, and it's a tactic in sprint car racing. We see it all the time. You intimidate a guy with your right rear tire. You slide into him. That driver has to move up the track to get away from that right rear tire. And that's what it appeared to me, is that Kevin Ward tried to get away from Tony, and when he did, he made contact with the wall, and that's where the accident
But there's
happened.
no question that Tony Stewart pinched him up to the outside. and forced
no
him
doubt.
out.
Because he's racing. That's what he does. And Tony Stewart's a better racer than Kevin Ward Jr.
That's a tactic in sprint car racing. But I don't see where there was any contact where he
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now again, and it looks like his car is being moved before it hits the wall.
We're going to see different things on this than Scott and Kirk are seeing, because I hear different things than they see.
Yeah, the last thing you said, Scott, just made me lose a little bit of the veracity from the previous stuff you were saying, because I can't believe you don't think he hit that car.
If he hit him, it was so slight.
He made I think he made contact,
listen,
Scott. He made contact.
Have you seen the dead spin video? Is that what you've seen? Have you seen the dead spin video? Or is that the only video?
I watched that video twice, and I couldn't stand to watch it again, Danny.
Well,
I couldn't stand to watch it
luckily
again
it's
because
not
one
so.
of my fellow
Luckily, it's not
racers
that graphic.
lost
I don't
his
like
life.
that either. Right?
And let me tell you something. I am sick. I am sick to my stomach the way that ESPN, Fox Sports 1, and a lot of national media have handled this. It's appalling the way they've handled it. And I give you an example. What was the basketball player that broke his leg last week? Kirk, you told me who it was. Who was it?
George for the Indiana Pacers.
They did not want to show that video because
they've pulled the video. They haven't shown it since
only after
maybe early yesterday.
Only after they showed it 300 times.
I never saw ESPN show it yesterday. That's just
unedited. It was on there. It was
when I woke up at about 8:15 in the mornings when I started watching it, I never saw him show it.
Well, frankly, Paul.
Anyway, I'm with you, though. I think it's interesting the way they handle these things.
And because you're right, they don't care about racing or reporting. This is just good TV, per se.
If it leads, it leads.
It's not
right?
good TV. It's
well,
not
no.
good
What
TV.
I'm saying, no, I was putting air quotes on that.
Yeah.
Good TV.
Okay.
People will watch it. You don't think people are watching it, hitting it on YouTube? The thing that makes it
But if they won't
not
put
so
a guy
bad for
breaking
it's
his
not
leg on there,
particularly
but they'll show a guy getting killed by a race car. Isn't there something wrong with that?
Because it's not graphic. You really can't tell what happens. He gets hit. He's on the ground. He's dead. We know he's dead.
If
Otherwise,
you know that the guy was killed, why would you show it at all?
I never saw it much. I honestly didn't. I never saw ESPN show the contact.
Some legal.
Well, they show. How
from-
many times have you seen the Dale Senior? He's dead. You know it. They showed it. It is not graphic.
And I had a problem with that too.
Well, I appreciate you not wanting to see it much. I watched it not for gruesome details, but I watched it because I'm trying to figure out what happened.
And you know what? I'm the type of person who I've never seen Paul George break his leg because I didn't want to see it. Okay. But this isn't great. And I turn away in movies when I know something's going to be gory, bloody, whatever. I don't like it. But this is not, it's not graphic. It's
I've
it's
listened
tragic
to it as much
because
as any.
because you know it's
I
the
guess-
man's dead.
I guess my biggest problem is that where's all this media when things are going good in the sport? They only show up when somebody gets killed.
Well, that's just true in just about anything.
I know, but the legal analyst on Fox Sports 1, I can't think of his name, and I don't care what his name is. He said Tony Stewart will be charged with whatever, and he put up these 3 different levels of charges, how much time he could be serving, and he predicted that he's going to get charged, and he was trying to act like he knew what he was talking about when the motor revved. I mean, come on, really? Really, this guy's probably never been to a dirt track race in his life, and now he's some kind of expert analyst. You know, it kills me.
Hey, well, the thing is, this is in the annals, not the annals, in the context of a sporting event that is being held. But I'll tell you what, I said this earlier, if out here in Overland Park, people exchanged words, somebody forced someone off the road, and then they drove around the block, and that person's out of the car and they hit them, they're probably going to get charged with something. Something, okay?
That would be more premeditated, wouldn't it, Danny?
Well, I'm just going to go
wouldn't
with...
it? No, hold on. Wouldn't that
he
be
knows,
more premeditated?
Probably more premeditated.
So you're assuming that it's premeditated, that what Tony did?
That's probably more premeditated. Correct. But even if the person comes around and does something accidental to that person, probably can see better. But although I will dispute the part about that. You know, I've got camera phone video here from 200 feet away, and the guy's clearly easy to see. So I know it's difficult when you're driving a car.
Hey, Danny, I've got a Sprint car. I own
sure
one. I want you to come over and sit in it, and I want you to check out the sight lines in it while you're sitting in it.
Well, then they probably should be better. I mean, if you're racing around on a dangerous track, then you better have better sight lines than the fact that you can't even see someone who's walking around on a track.
How about this? How about instead of changing the dynamics of these race cars, how about just make a simple rule, you stay in your car?
Well, isn't that a little bit, that's another topic, but isn't that a little difficult to enforce? The guy thinks maybe his car's going to catch on fire? Or,
I said that. I have already said that.
He could have gotten out of his car and not gone down the track.
If there was a safety issue, if the car's on fire, if you feel there's a life-threatening situation where you have to get out of the car, get out of the car. But don't get out of the car just to go over and start.
Well, agreed.
Well, we got a break, guys. We appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll talk about this
I'm just going to rely on the Ontario County Sheriff's Office.
That's right.
They've said that there's no criminal charges pending. They have all the details, and they've investigated.
And, Scott, I would like for you to go watch this one more time, just one time for me, and listen to it as much as you watch it.
All right. Tell me
what you think.
I want to throw one thing in here real quick.
Sure.
There's an organization called the Steve King Foundation. Great people. Steve King lost his life at Knoxville Raceway. His sister, Danette, they have this foundation. It's a great foundation that helps family members or drivers when they're injured or if there's a life lost. There's 2 gentlemen, Sean Peterson and a guy by the name of Royal Jones, who lives in Southern New Mexico Speedway. Sean Peterson is in Texas. Both of them have honored said that they would put up to $10,000. They will match up to $10,000 if people will go to the Steve King Foundation at stevekingfoundation.org. They will match up to $10,000 each, which would be $20,000 and $10,000 for the people that put up the other additional dollars. That you could raise $30,000 for Kevin Ward Jr.'s family. Please do me a favor, even if it's $1. Please trust the Steve King Foundation. Go to their website, stevekingfoundation.org. Make a donation so the Steve King Foundation can help Kevin Ward Jr.'s family. Please.
All right. It's out there, buddy. I appreciate
Scott.
it.
All right. Thank you, Scott Kirk. And that's why we have the RacinBoys on, to bring that perspective to it. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again on Friday.